Gunmen killed 4 and injured 11 at a kid's birthday party. Trump freezes all asylum claims and halts migration from third world countries. Luigi Mangione returns to New York court. I'm Kat Pockris, and this is News Recap. A child's birthday party in Stockton, California turned deadly over the weekend when gunmen opened fire, killing 4 people and injuring 11 others, including multiple children. The shooting happened at a banquet hall packed with around 100 guests. Authorities believe more than one shooter may have been involved and say the attack appears targeted rather than random. 3 children ages 8, 9, and 14 and 1 adult were killed. Several of the injured remain hospitalized with at least one in critical condition. Officials have not publicly identified the victims. Stockton police have arrested 5 people on unrelated gang, weapons, and conspiracy charges since the attack. Local sheriff urged the public to come forward with cell phone videos or eyewitness accounts, offering $25,000 reward for tips leading to arrests. A vigil was held hours later as the community mourned and tried to make sense of the horrific violence. President Donald Trump has invited the families of the 2 National Guard members shot in Washington, D.C. last week to the White House. Army Specialist Sarah Backstrom, 20, was killed in the attack, and Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, 24, remains in critical condition. Trump plans to meet with both families to honor the fallen soldier and support the injured service member. The shooter, who was identified as 29-year-old Afghan national Rahmanullah Lakanwal, came to the U.S. in 2021 after the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Emails from a caseworker show he struggled with mental health, often staying alone in a dark room for weeks, quitting work and leaving his family at risk of eviction. The emails also describe periods where he would drive long distances for days, followed by times he tried to make amends. He may have suffered from PTSD from his work with U.S. forces in Afghanistan. Before coming to the U.S., Lakanwal worked with Afghan Special Forces and the CIA. He applied for asylum in December 2024 and was approved in April 2025 after interviews and background checks. Officials say the government likely never saw the warning emails. Lakanwal faces murder and assault charges. He was shot during the attack and remains sedated in the hospital, making it hard for investigators to question him. Authorities say there is no evidence of foreign or extremist ties. In response to the shooting, the Trump administration has halted all asylum decisions. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services say the pause will stay until every applicant can be fully vetted. Officers can still review cases, but they cannot approve, deny, or close any asylum requests for now. The freeze is part of a wider crackdown, including a review of green cards from 19 countries, including Afghanistan, where the shooter is from. The government has also paused Afghan visas under the same program the suspect used. Cuba, Haiti, Iran, Somalia, and Venezuela are also on the list. In addition, President Trump has announced a permanent pause on migration from, quote, all third world countries and plans to end federal benefits for non-citizens. He says the moves are needed to protect the U.S., though critics warn they could tear families apart and break international asylum rules. Here's another example of how the administration's immigration policies are affecting people. A 19-year-old Annie Lucia Lopez Beloza was detained at Boston Logan Airport while trying to fly home to Texas for Thanksgiving. She was about to board a Southwest airline flight when airline staff told her there was a problem with her ticket. Immigration agents then surrounded her and took her into custody. She was then quickly moved to a detention center in Texas, and 48 hours after her arrest, she was deported to Honduras. She was brought to the U.S. from Honduras at the age of 7 and had been living in Texas with her parents and 2 younger siblings. Her father said neither she nor the family knew about any deportation order. Her lawyer says Lopez Beloza was deported in violation of a federal court order which specifically barred her removal while her immigration case was still pending. She had not signed any paperwork authorizing her removal. Lopez Beloza is a freshman studying business at Babson College in Massachusetts. The family left Honduras nearly 12 years ago, fleeing rampant crime and violence. The teenager now faces uncertainty about continuing her education and reuniting with her family in Texas. Lower Manhattan erupted into chaos on Saturday as anti-ICE protesters clashed with federal agents. The crowd trying to stop a rumored immigration raid formed human barricades and stacked trash at the garage entrance. When agents tried to leave, protesters chased them down Canal Street, throwing planters and trash cans, while masked officers sprayed irritants at the crowd. Police arrested several protesters, but tensions stayed high as chants and scuffles continued. Video showed nearly 200 people blocking streets, buildings, and exits while confronting federal officers. The standoff highlighted the difficulty federal authorities face carrying out immigration operations in dense, protest-prone areas like New York City. The garage is just blocks from last month's large ICE raid, which also drew crowds and forced agents to retreat. City officials criticized federal tactics, and NYPD Chief Jessica Tisch reportedly called the shows of force unacceptable and dangerous. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Sunday's meeting with Ukrainian officials was productive, but added there's still work to do. The talks in Florida included Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Rustem Umerov, head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council. The discussions focused on ending Russia's war and planning for Ukraine's long-term recovery. Umerov called the meeting successful and praised U.S. support, building on last week's talks in Geneva. The talks come as Russia stepped up attacks on Kyiv, killing at least one person and injuring 19. In the past week, Zelensky said Russia launched over 1,400 drones, 66 missiles, and 1,000 bombs on Ukraine. Despite progress, doubts remain that Putin will agree to give up territory or allow Ukraine to join NATO. 3 people died Saturday after a catamaran flipped in a river near Fort Myers in Florida. The accident happened around 4 p.m. 4 people were aboard when the boat overturned, throwing them into the water. Rescue teams pulled 3 victims from the river on Saturday. 2 were pronounced dead, and 1 was taken to a hospital in critical condition. On Sunday, a 4th person, 60-year-old, who had been missing, was found dead after an extensive search by the U.S. Coast Guard. The victims' names have not been released. The cause of the accident is under investigation. President Trump is taking another swipe at Joe Biden's record. Today, Trump said he's canceling every Biden order that was signed with an Autopen, a machine that copies a signature. On Truth Social, President wrote that any document signed that way is terminated and claimed the people using the Autopen did it illegally. He even warned that if Biden says he approved those signatures, he could face perjury charges. Biden signed 162 executive orders. It is unclear how many used an Autopen, but presidents routinely undo their predecessors' actions. Trump has already rolled back almost 90 Biden orders since returning to the White House. He has pushed this conspiracy claim for months, saying the Autopen was used to hide Biden's cognitive decline. Biden dismissed that as ridiculous and false, insisting he personally made all decisions. House Republicans released a report attacking Biden's Autopen use, but they found no clear evidence that aides acted without his approval. And yes, presidents from both parties use Autopens. Trump even admitted he used one himself, but only, quote, for very unimportant papers. And speaking of cognitive function, President Donald Trump said on Sunday that he would release his October MRI results, but offered few details about the test itself. When asked which part of his body was scanned, Trump said, quote, I have no idea. It was just an MRI. It wasn't the brain because I took a cognitive test and I aced it. Perfect score. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt previously said the MRI was part of Trump's routine physical and showed he remains in exceptional physical health, but no further details have been provided. In the meantime, President Trump's approval rating has dropped to 36%. Gallup reports the lowest of his second term, by the way. Disapproval has climbed to 60%. The poll, conducted November 3rd to 25th, covered the recent elections and the end of the record-long government shutdown. Trump's support among Republicans fell to 84%, while independents' approval hit a new low. Democrats continue to rate him in the single digits at 3%. Trump still gets his highest marks on crime, foreign affairs, and immigration from Republicans, and on Middle East policy from Democrats. Independents give him more credit on crime and trade. This drop follows months of relative stability at 40-41% and marks his second lowest approval ever after the 34% rating at the end of his first term in 2021 following the January 6th attack. Luigi Mangione appeared in a New York courtroom earlier today in the high-profile murder case of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione, who pleaded not guilty to state and federal charges, arrived in shackles that were removed once he entered. His attorneys argued that police illegally searched his backpack, seizing a notebook, a 3D printer gun, and a silencer. They also want statements he made at the time tossed, saying he was questioned before being read his Miranda rights. Prosecutors rejected both claims. The notebook reportedly includes writings about targeting a healthcare executive. If admitted, the evidence could show intent to whack, that's a quote, Thompson. Mangione, an Ivy League graduate, faces 9 felony counts in New York, including second-degree murder and federal terrorism charges that could bring the death penalty. His supporters outside court held Free Luigi signs, keeping up a year-long campaign. Hong Kong authorities arrested 13 people today, accusing them of manslaughter in the city's deadliest fire in decades. Officials say shoddy renovation materials helped fuel the blaze that has killed at least 151 people. Police are still searching the 7 towers where last week's inferno tore through the estate. Rescue teams have found bodies in stairwells and on rooftops where residents were trapped while trying to escape the flames. The fire has shocked the city, highlighting safety failures in high-rise housing and sparking outrage over building standards and oversight. Investigators continue to examine the cause, while authorities face growing pressure to explain how the deadly disaster unfolded. A new storm is hitting the eastern U.S., bringing heavy snow, rain, and ice that could disrupt travel on the first day of December, which is today. Most problems are expected on Tuesday, though, with weather improving by Wednesday. The storm moves east on Monday, reaching the mid-Atlantic by Tuesday and New England by Tuesday night. Winter weather alerts cover 72 million people from the Rockies to southern New England. Heavy rain and possible flooding are expected from Houston to Atlanta, with 2 to 3 inches of rain. Icy roads are likely in parts of Arkansas, Virginia, Kentucky, and West Virginia. The heaviest snow will fall from the Poconos to eastern Maine, with some areas seeing over a foot. Interstate 95 should see mostly rain with brief snow. Philadelphia, Boston, and New York could get wet snow and rain. The storm follows a rough Thanksgiving weekend, which brought record snow in Chicago and major travel delays across the Midwest. And that is all for now. The top stories of the day, no fluff and straight to the point. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. I'm Kat Pokris, and I'll see you next time.